Welcome to our session, Opportunities and Risks with AI Agents. These AI agents are no longer a future concept. They're here now, used for automating workflows, making decisions, do checks, and in some cases serving customers directly already. And they offer incredible opportunities for growth, efficiency, and innovation, but also bring real risks to jobs, profits, trust, and even your organization's agility if not applied properly. And today we will hear how some of the best minds in AI strategy, product, innovation, and ethics are helping businesses adopt AI agents in the right way in order to gain a competitive advantage without losing control. So the structure for today that we have in mind is approximately 40 minutes panel discussion, and we will cover your questions after in the Q&A. And we encourage you to add your questions in the chat and the Q&A box throughout the session. And if we are unable to answer all questions, follow-up email will be sent. And good to know is that the recording and the presentation will be shared after this session. Yeah, so my name is Jan Fleury, and I'm a Senior Director at Artefact. And Artefact is a global leader in data and AI consulting. We are dedicated to transforming data and AI into impact through the entire value chain of an organization, from finance to HR to marketing. And that's multidisciplinary and technology agnostic. And next to my role at Artefact, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here, I'm also a teacher at a business school where I teach data management, data governance, and data privacy, including ethics and AI governance. So the subject I'm really interested in the subject. But today is not about me. It's about you and, of course, our panelists. Amelia, can you please introduce yourselves?
Yes. Hi. Thank you, Jan. Hello, I am futurist Amelia Coleman. As a futurist, it's my job to know about the latest new and coming technologies and trends and their potential impact on the future of business as well as the future of our lives. I speak at conferences around the world, across industries. I was recently named one of the top 20 world-leading futurist speakers. And because I don't come from a traditional technology background, I believe I have a talent for being able to make the complex accessible. So while I talk about both opportunities and risks, it's always my goal to try to empower people with the foundational knowledge, language, and context that they need to make the most informed, responsible, strategic, and ethical decisions today that are going to lead us into that best possible future tomorrow. So thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You're welcome. And Gitte, can you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gitte Gendrup. Back in 2018, I took a leap and co-founded an AI consultancy when artificial intelligence was still quite niche. We were creating bespoke AI solutions for large organizations before it became the buzzword it is today. These days, I have transitioned into a slightly different role. I advise boards and executives of established businesses on navigating their AI transformation. And I mentor the next generation of AI entrepreneurs who are building the tools that will shape our future. It's been quite a journey watching this space evolve from promising technology to business critical infrastructure. And I'm delighted to join this discussion about some of the latest developments today.
Harry?
Hello, everyone. Harry Morfakis, partner here at Artefact in our London office. I lead our technology and engineering business. Spent about 8 years at Accenture prior to Artefact, leading the emerging technology teams, again, experimenting with the early days of what was GPT-3 back then and all the way forward now. So very much looking forward to speaking with you all.
Ashwin, last but not least.
Hello. Thank you, Jan, and thank you everyone for joining. And first of all, I'm Ashwin from MoEngage. So I'm the VP of products here at MoEngage. And I have over 15 years of experience building products and platforms, but mainly for marketing, in the space of MarTech, ad tech, and customer data platforms. So, my journey started pretty much before LLM was a thing and from the times of NLP and stuff, right? Like, so I've been an eternal optimist with technology. That's how I think about it. I truly believe technology, if utilized well, and we've seen this over and over again, is going to be super leveler for mankind. So you already know what tone I'm going to take through the through the discussion, and really looking forward to it. And here at MoEngage, I specifically focus on building a world-class customer engagement platform, which is a native in all the sense possible, right? Like, so that's what we're doing. We're helping all the largest enterprises here globally. So I want to share a few things from that lens as well. Thank you. Thanks, Jan.
Yeah. All right. Now we know who we are, who we are having in this panel. Yeah, to start, let's ground ourselves in reality. So we said, well, there are already many solutions running with agentic AI, and that's happening across all types of industries. I've got a question for Harry. Can you give us a recent example where AI agents delivered a measurable ROI or an efficiency gain?
Absolutely. So a lot of what we're seeing in the industry comes down to actually one of the core benefits of generative AI, which is the ability to take unstructured data and make sense of it. So for years, we've obviously had relational databases. We've been able to build automations. That's nothing new. What clients are realizing now is with the power of generative AI, and it's not as simple as plug and play. There's obviously a whole bunch of engineering that goes into making this successful and reliable, as I'm sure we'll be discussing throughout the call. What we're seeing now is clients are actually taking documentation. So in this case, they're taking large invoices, transforming them into effectively structured data. And then from that, they have agentic workflows, which then automate, for example, issuing POs. So very large automation of the back office function. And this is actually something that's been done in tandem with the procurement team. This wasn't forced on them. It was really kind of the co-developed, which we'll come to later. And that's a real key thing to driving successful adoption.
Yeah, well, interesting. And Ashwin, can you also share an example with us?
Sure. I think I can, kind of give two different flavors, right? Like, so one, since I've been a part of this journey, both internally at MoEngage, so there are two lenses that I wear, right? Like, one is a very internal first lens in terms of how we build agents for making our own lives better, right? As as product teams, as the technology development teams, how we've seen strong success in deploying like coding agents, which has actually which has brought in significant efficiency in terms of how people actually operate. And we've also seen a lot of cases where, we've deployed agents which are having measurable ROI in terms of, the quality, for the sales team, for example, for the SDRs and so on, right? That's a very internal first case where we are seeing a lot of efficiency gains across board. The second thing is about our customers. Some of the customers that we've seen use our AI products that we've actually built onto the customer engagement platform itself. So I can name a few, like I think Fastic is a very good example. I think we also published a case study with Artefact recently, right? So with such customers across industries, one of the biggest things that we see is that the benefit is typically in terms of outcomes that they care about, right? Which is typically better engagement of the customers or direct conversions and so on, right? So again, this comes from multiple levels. So either by hyper-personalizing the customer engagement that they can do through the platforms or hyper-experimentation that they can do at scale, that is something that was not available easily earlier on, right? So these are some cases, and I think that you've been seeing, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. And Amelia, can you give an example through your lens? If we look at an ethical or society angle.
Yeah. So one of the ways that I'm seeing a lot of my clients really utilize this technology and already seeing ROI is when it comes to marketing. And we're seeing some really big advancements in this area. And one of those is around compliance. So for highly regulated industries like finance and insurance and healthcare, we can now automate compliance approvals and checks across entire marketing channels. And for anybody who's ever worked in marketing, you know that this is a big win because we can often come across bottlenecks and missed opportunities because of compliance in this area. So in the financial industry, the estimated value here is in the billions. And then I have another marketing agency that is actually assigned a AI agent to each of their clients. So it's completely trained in their tone of voice, their brand guidelines, their synthetic customer personas. So every output across text and images and videos and quotes and interviews and social posts are completely aligned with the brand and easily approved. And this means that they've been able to take response time from hours and days and weeks down to minutes and seconds. So this has been a big ROI for them.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. And Gitte, can you give an example into adoption patterns and trends?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was changing my mind like 3 times in the last few weeks about what is a good example, and then I came across a new one this week, and I was super fascinated by that one. And this example shows that AI agents are not just about making existing processes better, 10% better, but you can also rethink completely how business gets done. So imagine a major grocer, a supermarket chain with hundreds of stores, tens of thousands of products, thousands of suppliers. The challenge? Category managers can only spare an hour or 2 per year with their smaller suppliers because they have thousands of them. There is simply no time for proper relationship building or commercial optimization. And then enter a set of AI agents trained in expert negotiation. And they're now handling ongoing discussions with small suppliers, reviewing performance, exploring new products, adapting to market changes. And it's early days, but it will add millions in additional value for the grocer. But the brilliant bit is, this is positive for the small suppliers too, because they're getting regular communication. They can respond to market shifts in real time rather than waiting months for that one annual conversation. And I thought that is a fantastic example of rethinking how we do business, not just an incremental improvement. So yeah, that's exciting.
Where the real innovation happens. Yeah. Great example of what's already there. Yeah, and I've got one other question. Now, could chasing quick wins with AI agents undermine building a long-term AI strategy? How do you look at that, Harry?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So the answer is to build effective agents, not just one, but a chain of them over time. You need data foundations. The challenge is for many companies, that's sometimes a multi-month, often multi-year process. So what you need to do is ultimately balance the trade-offs, and there's no solutions, just trade-offs, right? Between how do I build quick wins to evidence success and drive further adoption in the industry, because version 1 of your agents, I'm sure, is going to be great, but it's all about 1.5 to 2.5, etc. How do we drive that forward? So always making sure that you're evidencing quick wins, minimizing technical debt where possible, and building out this, or let's call it a platform level view that will ultimately power those agents, because that's how you bring your time to value and your cost of building more agents across more domains. And that's how we ultimately begin to automate more of the workplace.
Yeah, that makes sense to do it incrementally that way. Yeah. So AI agents are clearly delivering value already now, but there are also risks that can arrive in parallel. And that's a perfect segue into our next topic, the risks that might hurt your business if you don't adopt thoughtfully. So Artefact and MoEngage recently conducted a survey named Mind the AI Gap. So what consumers expect from brands. And we found something important. So like 41% of consumers say they would stay loyal to a brand if it's transparent about how it uses AI. And nearly a third would lose trust if they couldn't tell whether they were interacting with a human or an AI. That means that if one thing goes wrong, that could do potentially undo years of loyalty. So there's two types of trust audiences. One is the consumer, the end customer of the companies, and one is the employee, the other one. So I've got a question for Amelia. So how can leaders ensure internal trust and making employees feel that agents are here to empower them and not to replace them.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's important to really remember that AI is not inherently good or bad. It is a reflection of the values of the people who shape them. So right now, our people are relying on us to ensure that the efficiencies that we stand to gain with this technology don't come at the cost of the moral, ethical, and societal frameworks that have evolved over centuries to protect human vulnerabilities. So how we handle this transition today is going to play a pivotal and powerful role in the future that we live in tomorrow. So some of the ways that I think we can really invest in a foundation of trust that is not just good for our customers, but also for our employees is around establishing protocols around a consistent front end and an audible back end. So being able to make AI actions visible and traceable. Radical transparency around AI architecture, data, use, storage, and security. Values by design. So making sure that from the foundation, security, privacy, IP protections, inclusivity, sustainability, if these are your values, they should be embedded into these models. And then also guardrails. So being able to make sure that AI agents can recognize high-risk scenarios and escalate those to humans, being able to have safety nets around these AI stacks that in case something goes wrong, we can roll back to that last good state where things were okay. And then, finally is the human oversight and human accountability. All these things take time, but trust is a currency and building trust takes time, and shortcuts today are not going to serve us well tomorrow. So my advice for leaders right now is to establish a human first, human in the loop strategy. People really need to feel included and not left behind. And in the short term, at least, there is a lot more work for people. So yeah, we got a lot to do.
Yes. I love it that you say that the culture and the values are being reflected in the AI agent strategy, and how serious you take your employees. Gitte, this is also a bit like your domain. How do you look at this?
I mean, in terms of getting buy-in, and that's trust. And you said it, the key here is about empowering in the first instance very much and not replacing. And in the example I mentioned before with the supermarket negotiation agent, it was helping the category manager making the most of their category. It was doing things at scale they'd never have time to do and delivering a better category performance. And you can say that is when you're giving your employees more time to become the expert. So that is probably a good place to start in order to build that trust. And of course, there are challenges generally on adoption. And it is a challenge. Two things to add probably to that. There's training, and there's training to get people in the organization using AI, not just about writing prompts, but also understanding what sits underneath it all. And then there's managing the change. I mean, in some ways, AI changes everything. And in other ways, it changes nothing. You still need to make sure people are willing to and understands how to use any new process, tool, or system.
Yeah, absolutely true. Yeah, absolutely true. And let's spend a second on consumer trust. So how can brands that balance the AI efficiency with protecting transparency and trust? How do you look at that within the solutions that you're building, Ashwin?
Yeah, so I think consumer trust is ultimately key, right? Like, I mean, irrespective of whether it is AI or not, for a brand, I think winning, I think I echo what Emilia said. So trust is like probably the foremost thing for a brand for them to be sustainable, right? Like for the long run. So I think there are a bunch of things that I believe it needs to be in place, or, I think I see a lot of practitioners following that essentially. One, I think we need to have very strong intent to start with, right? Which means an organization, if they want to win a consumer trust, I think they need to have very strong intent, which typically translates to very strong policies in terms of how they want to actually communicate, right? So this is what will decide whether an agentic AI frameworks, the agents that are there that are deployed in production, whether they are actually calling out and being transparent, and how transparent are they? In what touch points are they telling the consumers that you're actually talking to an agent? And at what point, what decisions, were actually taken by an agent and not a human, right? That level of transparency is something that I believe will actually come from a brand having a very strong intent, is what I feel, right? Like that's probably one. Same thing is, I think there are very tactical advice I might want to give here, which is essentially to say, I think I'm seeing brands which basically very transparently call out, what are actually the ways in which agents are working, right? For example, if they're using a HR tech platform for recruitment, they actually call out, like, at what touch points is the resume screening happening through
Yes, understandable.
agents,
Yeah.
or is it human, right? So that distinction, I think these are some ways in which calling out and being transparent would definitely buy the customer's trust sustainably.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So trust isn't just a nice to have; it's essential, and that brings us to how we innovate without losing control. And so, like, trying new AI tools is exciting, but if we move too fast, we can run into problems like security risks, breaking rules, or unfair results to use AI safely. And that brings me also to a question for our speakers, starting with Geeta. So, what simple guardrails should businesses set up now, so AI stays helpful and not harmful, as already touched upon a bit before?
Yeah. I guess I don't want to be glass half empty, but in some ways you say simple, but there is no excuse for not making it safe, secure, and legal. I don't think that's negotiable, to be perfectly honest. Both because risks can be turbocharged, the existing risks can be turbocharged by AI, but also because new risks are added because of the nature of AI agents. You used to be able to test models before you deployed them. With agentic AI, you need to monitor them and respond, and be able to respond quickly, probably using other AI agents. So those guardrails, I'm not sure that that's simple, because to your point, it's about fairness. It's about how do you deal with bias, the unexpected outputs. And I think the short version is you need to be really clear on what can the agent do autonomously. What can it do with a human in the loop, and what should it never attempt?
Yeah, yeah, but it's like total governance. Anyone can answer these questions, but like the total governance, if there are like thousands of decisions being made a minute or an hour, how that you cannot govern everything. How to approach that, making things like more explainable, looking back. Harry, what's your vision about that?
No, it's a good question. I think the way to think about it is, even if humans were doing that end-to-end process, there would still be no way to make it truly 100% governable. So we have to look at what are the alternative side to it. For me, it's a case of, as long as we can catalog and log these decisions that are being made, and we can do a post hoc analysis on it, we're always able to actually get closer. And we have to think about it from a purely in a statistical sense. If we have, let's say, 1,000 queries that are being resolved today, and let's say 5 of them are less than perfect or suboptimal. If we know what those are, we can then further improve the models, we can further improve the responses, but we have to see it as this is an ongoing effort. This isn't just I've implemented an agent, it's perfect, it's done, it's as good as it's going to get. It will get better over time, but you need to have those back-end processes and the governance, to your point, that brings that all together. So you have to see it as a living, breathing application, for want of a better word, which is no different to what we do nowadays for a lot of traditional engineering. We just need to factor in that it has a little bit more control, and we're willing to give it control. But again, it's about how much of a leash do we give it.
Yeah, Ashwin, can you give an example of how you do that within your software?
Yeah, so I think I'm just going to tail on to what Harry was talking about, right? I think essentially, for me, I think it is not very different from an existing software engineering system as such, right? Like, the only big difference, and I think that's very important, is that the engineering systems today are for convenience, and the agents are actually for cognition, right? Like, I think that's kind of the shift, if you think about it. And what that brings in is a bit of non-determinism, right? In the olden world of non-agentic, so to say, we always could say that, hey, these are going to be the finite outcomes. Whereas, we were always clear, right? For these inputs where, these are typically the output that you would expect. And you could actually create a rule book, so say, heuristically, and it was very easy. Or rather, it was doable. Whereas in this particular world, right, I think it's a lot to do with the feedback loop, I believe, right? So, in fact, one of the things that I would actually talk about is having input and output filters for safety as like a tactical mechanism to actually solve for this, right? Which means that every, like you can actually filter this at multiple levels, right? If it's an agent, you can actually start applying filters at an input level from a prompt level. When someone is asking you a question to, that is where you can actually check for a bunch of different things. For example, make sure you don't take in PII data or, you don't let the system jailbreak and so on and so forth. And similarly, you could also, apply mechanics in the output layer, right? To make sure that there is another checking or another level of guardrails in place, which would actually make sure that the output that we deliver or the product delivers finally, or the decision that we deliver is well within the constraint, right? The trade-off typically is to make sure that, we are always cognizant of what is important to an organization, right? That has always been the case if you think about it. If an organization has always taken a stand towards, transparency and towards very strong governance and compliance, I think those things could still be done here, but just that it's a bit more extra effort that one needs to go. That's how I see this.
Yeah. Okay. So it can be developed in a with proper governance. Is that also what you see in practice, Gitte?
I think yes. I think that's fair. And that is what I'm seeing. I also kind of just taking a step back and looking at kind of the business end of it. There's also something about when you get started, you do want to select where you start, both in terms of business value, so what's my returns, but also that complexity of implementation. And this is where your tech team will and should have quite a big say, because you select your level of risk by virtue of the complexity of what is underlying this. This is not rocket science. So how can I make sure there is the minimal data access and only what they need? How can I make sure that the financial authorization levels are not kind of able to go absolutely nuts? I mean, customer refunds would be quite an example. And if you've got the agent optimized on customer happiness, all of a sudden it might refund a hell of a lot of money. Yes, so there's something about when you decide where to go first, and this is that balance of risk and without losing control. It's a bit of common sense of that is probably also quite useful.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. And how can for Amelia, how can companies then pilot AI agents without risking customer data or breaking compliance rules? Do you have an idea about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big question on a lot of people's minds, and I've really seen this with my clients in highly regulated industries. I think there's about 20% are using AI right now to achieve benefits, but then the other 80 are very hesitant, and for good reason, because right now what we're finding when it comes to productivity is that it can actually be slower because of inconsistencies and because of mistakes. And it means that people have to go back and check. And when you're in a highly regulated industry, you can't really afford to do that. So there's a lot of skepticism right now. But this is something that's getting better, and we're seeing it improve all the time. So it's about, I think, a really good place to start if people haven't is with their data sets and making sure that you have a catalog that is up to your standards and establishing your own internal standards around what makes a good data set. How do you prove that it's not biased and that it's legally owned and all these kind of things, because getting your proprietary data in order today, this data is only going to go up in value moving forward. So I think that's a really good place to start. And if you don't have a strong foundation of your proprietary data, it's only going to trip you up later on. So it's a really good place to start that.
Yeah, so part of that is that has been going on for years, is the data quality, the data explainability as an input for AI, which is very important. Yeah.
And we talk about AI taking over a lot of jobs, but this is a place where it's creating jobs. It needs more
Yes.
people in this area right now. So
Yeah, I think this is not that there's no organization in the world where this is not a topic, the data quality and explainability and things.
yeah.
And there's still a lot of work to do. AI can help with that, but not only. We also need many humans to fix that, to make it work. Yeah. But guys, if we have the safe innovation, the next challenge is making sure you don't become too dependent. So what I mean is that if you use AI tools that work well together, they can give you a big edge. But what happens if one of those tools malfunctions, gives wrong results, breaks your campaign, or even if your supplier disappears? That happens at AI startups and scale-ups that simply disappear or are being taken over and end of product. So relying too much on a single tool or a tightly linked system can put your performance and the resilience at a risk. I have a question for Harry. If an AI tool that's part of your integrated stack malfunctions or delivers wrong results, then what do you think is the quickest way for teams to identify the problem and reduce the impact on live campaigns, as an example?
A huge part of this is observability and transparency and how you set up these systems to do monitoring. So when something fails, you know what's failed, and ideally you have a bit of sometimes it's a bit of a hot backup or a cold backup that you can bring online to actually support that. So if there is downtime, it's hopefully minimal. But I think to your point, Jan, with incumbent large firms, sometimes you need to decide when you architect these platforms end to end, which elements do you want to make open source, which elements are you willing to take risks on, and then making sure that you have the right mitigations. Again, the same way in terms of how we've been building apps for the last 20, 30 years, it's a very similar approach. I don't think anything has changed there necessarily. It's really more around, okay, we now have additional considerations. We now need to consider additional fallbacks and make sure we're ready. So as an ops team, you would make sure you could cater for that, and you do dry runs, failovers over weekends to make sure that you have risk tolerance and you're not fragile, so to speak. So it's about considering those outcomes and testing for them.
Yeah. Ashwin, do you agree?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly. In fact, the one point I wanted to highlight here, right? I think it's about a lot of thinking ahead, especially in this particular new world that we live in, right? So what that would mean is that you can't wait. This can't be an afterthought, right? There is no way this can be an afterthought where you wake up to not having a very strong observability or evaluation framework in place, right? So that's why I think like one of the recommendations that I typically give folks is to always have, when you have to make a trade-off in terms of making sure that, are you trying to be fast or are you trying to be right? I think in this particular world, it's even more important to be doing the right things because actually there's a lot of cascading effect, right? Like there's always cascading effect.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, because you're dependent on a lot of foundational models and so on, I think that is really complex. So yeah, I think a couple of thoughts that I have in terms of like how could we mitigate, but yeah, we talk about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, if we go to this avoiding dependency, it keeps flexibility and continuity, and that's exactly what you need for a future wave of AI, capability, so to say. So that brings me to the last topic. So AI agents are evolving fast, bringing more autonomy, richer context handling, creative capabilities, and the things we already heard from the panelists. But let's look at the future. What's on the near future too? What's next? And how should leaders and teams prepare? So Ashwin, what do we have as an innovation horizon in the future software?
Yeah, so I think again, I'll probably speak on behalf of the MarTech side of things, right? Like because I think there's a lot of things that are happening, and I think typically, if you've seen advertising marketing, is one space where there's always been a lot of value that can have. So what I am truly bullish on for the next 12 to 18 months, I think on one, the decisioning capabilities, the autonomous decisioning capabilities, right? Like on which user should get what content. For what specific outcomes, I think that decisioning is going to scale at a different level, right? Like, which means it's going to be personalized communication for the user at the right time, making sure that it's actually, adding up to the business outcomes while also maintaining and managing the customer's expectation and not creating irritation or fatigue about a brand, right? Like, so this is what I think is definitely in the horizon of like probably 12 to 18 months from a MarTech marketing stack perspective. I think another important thing that I feel very strongly about is essentially how even the surfaces, the consumer surfaces, right? Even the apps and how we perceive apps today is going to change, right? Like if you think about it, we are already personalized to a very good level of content and what recommendations are being shown. I think if I have to take a punt, I would even say that even the apps are going to be very personalized for each one of us based on the workflows, right? So these are some things that I see
and we
will
don't
happen.
need necessarily a lot of personal data to become personal, right? If you have the right interaction with an app, then it feels personal, even if you don't really know each other, didn't know each other before. Of course, that would help, but it's not essential, right?
And
Yeah. So I think,
Yeah. No, okay. And Harry, what do you think? What are the new AI agent capabilities, let's say in the next year, 1.5 years?
I think for looking into 2026, one of the things I'm most excited about is increased capabilities with regards to tool use from the models. And we've begun to see that this year from the likes of particularly Anthropic and OpenAI. I think for me, other thing is computer use. For anyone who's used agents as an example, it's incredibly powerful. It's not perfect, but where it's trending now is that they're becoming more autonomous. And the most interesting thing is that when we started, it could run a task that took 5 minutes. Now it can run up to close to, I think, nearly 2 or 3 hours, and it's going to go far beyond that. So as that length of time expands, we're going to be able to do more and more tasks within that context window. And that's really exciting from what could be automated. Because right now, if you look at the total scope, there's only a handful of items, which as we automate that, I think we're going to be able to give people the opportunity to really add value in other ways to the business. So that's coming, but we have to begin thinking more full stack workforce transformation instead of just let's put an agent in. We need to think a bit more holistically about it. But computer use is the thing we're excited about in 26.
Yes. And Amelia, as a trend watcher, what do you think will happen in the next year, 1.5 years?
Well, so as agents start to make more purchasing decisions on our behalf, marketers won't just be competing for the attention of humans, but they'll also be competing for the attention of bots. And the emotional and psychological appeal that works on humans doesn't work on bots. They only care about data, things like prices, ratings, reviews, metrics, certifications, and how aligned your product or service is with their clients' preferences, values, and budgets. So generative engine optimization, I think, is going to rival, if not exceed, SEO. And we're already seeing an entire new industry arise around this area that optimizes data so that it's machine readable and it rises to the top of generative engine searches. And this is an area that is only going to grow in the months and the years ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to add one thing to what Harry said too. So when we talk about the demand that this is creating, so we're seeing this huge increase in demand for computation, connectivity, and that also means energy and water. So I think we can't forget about the economic and political challenges that this technology is going to create at a global scale. So we're going to see a lot more about that. And then also, from a risk perspective, as soon as companies and countries start to announce that they've achieved their definition of AGI, whatever that is, I think we should be prepared for a backlash. I think that's going to rile a lot of people up and wake a lot of people up.
Yeah. That's also a way to look at it. Yeah. And Gitte, if we look through the lens of the future, how do you think AI will reshape roles, teams, leadership in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think massively. And there's a few things there. So firstly, it is not enough for the board and the leadership to not understand risks and AI governance. They do need to. And there's a fair few of them that actually do not do that. But equally, also understanding the opportunities for the organization. So that there's something about that training that needs to be happening at all levels of the business. And some things, I guess, haven't changed in the sense that leadership also still needs to be asking the right business questions. So that is super important. Second thing is, we may be seeing in the future not an organization chart, not an org chart, but a work chart, adding the AI agents into the org chart, so to speak, because many people will be working alongside agents.
It's like a human, yes, a superhuman.
Like a human, yeah. Yes. And of course, there will be new jobs or jobs that are fully transformed. A frontline support engineer may become a prompt engineer, but many other jobs will also change. To a degree from doing the task to monitoring the task, I guess. But also it means that it is likely that HR, the people team, will be needing to reskill human employees at scale. Yeah. And because of that, HR also needs to change. The people team also needs to change because they need to understand what is it that an agentic workforce can do. And how do I make sure that the agentic part of my workforce is adhering to the specific values that are our organization's values? What is our internal tone of voice? And how do we want to kind of be collegiate? And that has to apply to them. For that matter, and how do you drive it?
That resonates with what Amelia already also mentioned, from strategy to values translated into how you deal with people and with technology.
Exactly. And how do you even drive a change management program if you don't know, as perhaps the people team or transformation team, if you don't know what the agentic workforce can and cannot do now and in 3 years? So I think there's some big changes coming that too.
Yeah. So we've now come to the time where we can look at the questions. One question from Alan Parpala, if I pronounce it properly. Many of you mentioned AI agents took over back office tasks. Do they do it unsupervised, or is there still someone or something validating what they do? It's already covered a bit. Who wants to elaborate on that?
Maybe I can go at that. After you, Harry?
Yeah,
no,
that's okay.
Jump in, Ashwin, please.
Good.
Sure. No, I think that's a wonderful question because I think this is the hype versus reality at the crux of it, right? So one thing that we've realized is that it's kind of, I think of it as a funnel, right? Like, so if you think about it, there were tasks that were actually done by humans fully. Like that's really what used to happen. So the way I see it in action is that part of that now is actually reduced, but there would still be accountability at a human level at the end of it, right? What that means is you would definitely need to have human in the loop. But the thing is, the effort that it takes to do the same amount of work has significantly reduced, right? So it's definitely not completely unsupervised. So the way I can throw in an example, right? Like, so if there is a documentation that used to happen, right? In the product documentation that used to happen. So what we've done is we've kind of made sure that there is a maker checker kind of a model. So there is an LLM as a judge, which basically judges and scores the documentation and suggests improvement ideas. So now it can do 700 documents in a week, right? Like, if we have some cutout like that. Whereas for a human, this would have taken the whole year, right? So now this could do it at first level, and then there is going to be still a human validation, either by random sampling, or there are many methods in which we could do this, but there is still an element of supervision that would be needed, is what I feel. Harry.
Yeah, what we should never forget, I think that Harry also mentioned something like that. Humans also made mistakes in the past, and we couldn't supervise everything. But do you have something to add, Harry, on what Ashwin's response was?
I think Ashwin covered it excellently. I think the only thing I would add is that it's probably one of the most frequent requests we get is how do we build that validation layer to give us the confidence. And actually, when you start looking into it, there's not that much the humans are going in and actually fixing. It's working well, but it's important to have that layer. It's how you build trust, right? If I can see it, I can begin to trust it, and that's how we begin to walk on that path. So that's really key on that.
Yeah. Well, let me look at the questions again.
So while you do that, I can perhaps mention that, for example, in the supermarket example with the category teams and the long tail of suppliers, while the negotiation was being done by the AI negotiator, it could not sign a new contract. So amendments to contracts, new contracts, always ended up on the virtual table, at least, of an actual buyer or category manager.
Yeah. And there's one question from Brent. He says deciding AI policy and governance can lead to blockers for companies adopting agentic AI. It's already being touched upon a bit in this discussion. But the actual question is, how do we weigh up the risk and cost of implementing agentic AI versus the risk and cost of non-adoption? How should we calculate real-world ROI?
That's a really good question, and I don't know if I have the whole answer to it, but one thing that I really think we need to be measuring as far as metrics now is human ROI and personal ROI. So, I mean, from a monetary aspect, yes, we want to see numbers, increase and those kind of things. But then from a human perspective, we have to be able to measure and prioritize things like time management. Is this saving me tons of time so I can move on to tasks that really matter? Mental well-being. Is this saving me a huge agony and headache doing mind-numbing tasks that I really hate to do? Happiness, those kind of things. So we need to make sure that these technologies are working for us as people on a human level and not just a business level, which is also very important. But I think because it's going to take time. It's going to take so much time. So these metrics become real important in the shorter time and establishing them for the longer term as well. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does.
I'd just like to add to that. I completely agree with what Amelia said. And anecdotally, we spoke with a CIO earlier in the week who they've got a really strong belief that juniors coming into the company, we should minimize the use of AI for the first couple of years. They learn the basics and what everyone has actually gone through already to date in that company. So they come away at the end of that, 18 months, 24 months with real hard skills, and they're actually better set up like their peers and seniors to actually use some of the AI tools, because otherwise you risk not doing the hard work and actually the learnings from it. And it's how do you make sure that the people we bring in can continuously be educated at all levels of their career journey, and that's a hugely important thing that I think is challenging a lot of leaders nowadays.
I think that's
an important part of the AI Act as well, the permanent
absolutely.
education of people, improving that. Yeah, sorry.
I think that's a really great example, and I think it was Gartner in June that said they predict that by the end of 2027. 40% of the agentic AI projects would be basically shut down again because they were struggling to demonstrate ROI. I think importantly though, there's something about just because you create a process efficiency, say, that doesn't mean you banked it. And that challenge is not different from any system implementation or indeed any other improvement that's been going on the last many, many years. Just because you improve something in a process doesn't mean you can bank the money. And that makes the ROI discussion always, it's not straightforward. It's a bit complicated, isn't it?
Yes.
And one last point on that. I think one way I typically look at this is, long term is a short term outcomes, right? So one way to think about whether not to miss out or miss out, I think it's not that binary. So the easiest way I typically way is to say, hey, can I reduce the scope of what that means to, call out this agent, right? Can I reduce the scope, but still make sure there is strong governance, there is strong policies that we can apply and still get outcomes, right? That's a way for me to always think about, the long-term vision, still getting benefits in the short term, right? That's how I typically apply this.
Yeah. One question it feels more like a real life question from anonymous, but that's not so important. I like the question. If you had to choose, who should lead AI agent development and transformation in SMEs and startups with limited resources, of course? Which team would you choose? Marketing, or does this mean even small companies who create an actual software IT department responsible for this?
That's a really good question. So, I mean, my sort of gut reaction is that actually where we're going to see the biggest impact is across workflows. So you don't actually want this to happen within siloed teams. You actually want people representative of all the different teams from all the different perspectives in on this transformation, because it's not just about short-term games, but about the big-term games. That said, I think having a roadmap forward for where you are starting to really see those ROIs and being able to make a case that goes out and spreads within your company. I know marketing is a good place to start. So that's their instincts probably good on that too. But go ahead, Harry. Please add to it. Yeah.
I think for me, we wanted to add that to echo your point, it is across the organization. I think where we've seen success is where it's not one team, it's usually IT plus supply, or actually we're focused on customer care. So we need the customer ops team, but we also need the product team as well involved. You have to bring them together because, to your point, you're traversing these workflows, and very, very rarely do you stay within one silo or domain. You need to bring everyone together. And that's why agentic transformation can be challenging. But again, it becomes more of an organizational level problem versus a technical one at that point.
Yeah, just one thing that again, like that is happening right now is that the roles are getting blurred, right? The traditional roles getting blurred. I can speak from a product perspective, right? The product engineering design has come together like never before, right? Because for any agentic product, right, like there are two broad cuts that I think about, right? One, the ones who are actually implementing the agent, right? And the second is the domain expert, right? This could be a customer success team and so on and so forth, who typically have a domain expertise, which typically used to reside a lot with the product or the marketing teams. And I think the lines are blurred to a point where I think every single agent implementation, if you look closely, will not happen in silos with just like a technology team, right? However, that specific question about an SME or a startup having to go through this, the good thing there is that we don't need that sophistication of technology with a lot of no-code tools available today, right? So you don't need to like invest heavily in a full-blown technology team or a software development team. You could also start small with some of these no-code tools with a lot of domain experts coming together. That's how that's one playbook that I've seen work.
Yes, it's never the technology itself. The technology serves a purpose for the company or the NGO. And the technology development is not a goal in itself. It never is. Yeah, it really resonates with me. So we can't answer all questions, but we will get back on them after the meeting. So in closing, so today we've heard that AI agents bring already real value. And leaders who win long term are doing at least three things. One is setting clear governance. Two is avoiding over-dependence. And three, preparing teams for constant change and also educate them. And that's part of that. So it's still a very interesting topic. And at least in the short term, there's a lot of work. Seeing the discussions we are having, and still that's one of also the eye-openers for me today. A lot is changing, but on the other hand, still is a lot is still the same. And if you look at it, it makes it easier to comprehend and to manage. Yeah. Thank you for your time, and see you at the next opportunity.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.